The recent revelations unfolding on the young, and the restless point to a deeply disturbing truth. Mariah Copeland has abducted Dominic Newman Abbottwinter's chancellor, an act that cannot be dismissed as a sudden lapse in judgment or a momentary emotional spiral. Instead, it appears to be the culmination of long-suppressed trauma, untreated psychological wounds, and the relentless, corrosive influence of Ian Ward, a man whose presence in Mariah's life has never truly ended, even when she believed she had escaped him. This storyline does not merely revolve around a missing child. It exposes the fragile line between survival and self-destruct, and how trauma, when left unresolved, can metastasize into something dangerous not only for the victim, but for everyone around them. Mariah's mental health struggles have never been a secret, yet they have often been treated as chapters she could close simply by enduring them. Her ordeal with Ian Ward left scars far deeper than what therapy sessions and medication could easily erase. She entered treatment not because she was healed, but because she was drowning, and for a time, there was the illusion of progress. What makes this situation tragically ironic is that while Mariah was attempting to rebuild herself, the very man who shattered her sense of reality continued to intrude upon her life. Repeatedly and deliberately, Ian's presence was not benign or coincidental. It was invasive, predatory, and psychologically violent. Each visit reopened wounds Mariah had barely managed to bandage, reinforcing the delusion that she could never truly escape him, that he still had power over her thoughts, her fears, and her identity. As the hallucinations intensified and her grip on reality weakened, Mariah's treatment became increasingly ineffective. Therapy requires stability, honesty, and distance from the source of trauma, and Mariah had none of those. Eventually, she abandoned treatment altogether, not because she believed she no longer needed help, but because the noise in her head became louder than the voices trying to guide her back to safety. This abandonment marked a critical turning point. From that moment forward, Mariah was no longer simply struggling, she was unraveling. Tessa Porter, who had stood by her with remarkable patience and love, reached a breaking point of her own. Watching the woman she loved drift further into paranoia and emotional volatility, while refusing the help she desperately needed, became unbearable. Tessa's decision to file for divorce was not an act of cruelty, but one of survival, a recognition that love alone could not save Mariah from herself. Sharon Newman, meanwhile, was left grappling with a mother's worst fear, the sense that her child was slipping away into something dark and unreachable. Sharon's intuition has always been sharp, particularly when it comes to Mariah, and the silence surrounding her daughter's whereabouts and state of mind could only deepen her anxiety. Sharon understands better than anyone that untreated mental illness does not remain static. It evolves, often in unpredictable and dangerous ways. Her fear was not only for Mariah's safety, but for what Mariah might do if left alone with her demons for too long. It is within this volatile psychological landscape that Dominic's abduction takes place. Mariah did not act out of malice in the traditional sense. She knew, on some level, that what she was doing was wrong. Yet awareness alone is meaningless when a person's internal compass has been dismantled. Ian Ward's voice, whether physically present or echoing within her mind, served as a constant push toward transgression. He did not merely encourage her actions, he framed them as necessary, even righteous. In his warped narrative, Mariah was not stealing a child, but saving him, reshaping his reality in a way that mirrored the psychological imprisonment Ian himself had once imposed on her. The cruelty of Ian's manipulation becomes even more apparent in the chilling suggestion he makes to Mariah that she tell Dominic his parents no longer want him. This is not a random act of emotional abuse. It is a deliberate reenactment of trauma, a technique Ian knows all too well. It is the same method once employed by Jordan, who used similar tactics on Claire Grace Newman, severing her sense of belonging and rewriting her understanding of love and family. By pushing Mariah to repeat this behavior, Ian is not only harming Dominic, but forcing Mariah to become a vessel for the very abuse that destroyed her. In doing so, he ensures that she remains bound to him, complicit in his cruelty, and unable to see herself as anything other than the monster he always claimed she was. Yet the story does not unfold in complete darkness. Abby Winters, devastated by Dominic's disappearance and overwhelmed by fear, turns to an unlikely source of strength, the memory of someone she has lost. In moments of extreme crisis, grief can transform into something powerful, almost transcendent. Abby's belief that a guardian angel may be watching over her child is not mere superstition. It is a manifestation of hope in its most desperate form. Whether this presence is symbolic or something more tangible remains open to interpretation. But it serves a crucial narrative purpose. It reminds viewers that love does not simply vanish with death, and that the bonds forged through loss can still exert influence over the living. This raises a haunting possibility. Could this unseen protector be the force that ultimately intervenes, disrupting Mariah and Ian's hold over Dominic? The idea is not that a miracle will occur in the literal sense, but that Abby's connection to the past may guide her toward the truth, sharpening her instincts and leading her closer to her child. In contrast to Mariah, who has been consumed by unresolved trauma, Abby channels her pain into determination, refusing to surrender to despair. Where Mariah collapses inward, Abby reaches outward, drawing strength from memory rather than being crushed by it. The tragedy of this storyline lies in its duality. Mariah is both perpetrator and victim, acting under the influence of a man who has systematically dismantled her sense of self. Ian Ward remains the true architect of the chaos, his constant need for control manifesting through manipulation rather than direct action. Dominic, innocent and defenseless, becomes the battleground upon which old wounds are reopened and new ones are inflicted. And Abby, caught in the aftermath, must navigate grief, terror, and hope all at once, clinging to the belief that love, even from beyond the grave, may still have the power to protect her child. As these threads continue to intertwine, the question is no longer simply whether Dominic will be rescued, but what the cost of that rescue will be. Can Mariah be pulled back from the edge before she fully becomes what Ian has molded her into? Will the intervention, whether psychological or symbolic, be enough to sever Ian's grip on her mind? And if Dominic is saved, will the damage inflicted during his captivity leave scars that echo far into the future? The answers remain uncertain, but one truth is painfully clear in Genoa City. The past never stays buried, and the ghosts that linger are often the most dangerous of all. The latest hints emerging from the young and the restless suggest that Ian's influence over Mariah Copeland has not only persisted, but deepened in a disturbingly intimate way. According to these revelations, Ian has successfully convinced Mariah to keep Dominic with her, framing the act not as a crime, but as the fulfillment of a dream they were both denied. For most of their lives, in Ian's twisted logic, Dominic is not a child being taken from his family, but a symbol of salvation, proof that love, belonging, and family can still be claimed even after a lifetime of loss and damage. At this moment, the red-haired woman appears to be following Ian's guidance almost blindly, clinging to the illusion that what she is doing will finally grant her the stability and affection she has always craved. What makes this manipulation particularly dangerous is its emotional precision. Ian does not appeal to Mariah's anger or resentment, he appeals to her longing. He speaks to the wounded child inside her, the part of her that never felt safe, never felt chosen, never felt permanently loved. By promising her a ready-made family, Ian offers Mariah a shortcut to healing, one that bypasses accountability, therapy, and truth. In her fragile mental state, this promise becomes irresistible. Mariah is not acting out of cruelty or even selfishness in the conventional sense. She is acting out of desperation, driven by the belief that love obtained through illusion is better than loneliness endured through reality. Yet the foundation of this fantasy is rotten, because it is built on Ian's need for control rather than Mariah's need for healing. Against this backdrop of psychological manipulation, Abby Winter's response to Dominic's disappearance introduces a strikingly different emotional and spiritual dimension to the story. After Devin Winters speaks with the police, Abby reveals that she has been praying to Chance Chancellor, expressing her belief that he is watching over their son as a guardian angel. This is not framed as a casual or symbolic statement. It is spoken with conviction, as though Abby genuinely believes that Chance's presence still exists in some form beyond death. In moments of unbearable fear and helplessness, Abby turns not to logic or strategy, but to faith and memory, anchoring herself to the man she loved and lost. The idea of Chance Chancellor as Dominic's guardian angel resonates on multiple levels, both narratively and emotionally. Chance's death left a profound void, not only in Abby's life, but in the structure of the family itself. His absence was never fully processed on screen, a fact that left many viewers feeling that his story ended abruptly, without the closure such a character deserved. There was no funeral shown, no communal moment of mourning, no final goodbye. Instead, Chance simply vanished from the narrative, leaving behind unresolved grief and unanswered emotional questions. Abby's belief that Chance is still watching over Dominic feels like an attempt to reclaim that missing closure, to assert that his story did not simply end, but transformed. From a storytelling perspective, the notion of an angel Chance does not require a literal supernatural appearance to be effective. It can function as a guiding force, a symbolic presence that influences events through intuition, coincidence, and emotional resolve. Abby's faith in Chance may sharpen her instincts, pushing her toward the right decisions at critical moments, even when logic alone might fail her. In contrast to Mariah, who is being guided by a living embodiment of her trauma, Abby is guided by the memory of love, protection, and stability. This contrast is crucial. Ian represents the past that refuses to let go, while Chance represents a past that continues to protect without demanding anything in return. The danger, however, remains very real. While Mariah would never intentionally harm Dominic, Ian cannot be trusted under any circumstances. His history proves that he is capable of convincing others to commit acts they would normally find unthinkable. Time and again, Ian has demonstrated an almost surgical ability to identify emotional vulnerabilities and exploit them until resistance collapses. Mariah's current state makes her especially susceptible to this kind of manipulation. The longer Dominic remains with her under Ian's influence, the greater the risk becomes. Not because Mariah wants to hurt the child, but because her perception of reality is being steadily rewritten. This raises the terrifying question of how far Ian might be willing to go. If his fantasy of family begins to crumble, will he escalate his tactics to maintain control? Will he push Mariah into even darker territory, convincing her that the outside world is the enemy, that Abby and Devin have abandoned Dominic, that isolation is safety? The parallels to other manipulative figures in Genoa City's past are impossible to ignore, particularly the psychological abuse inflicted on children through lies about being unwanted. or in loved. The suggestion that Dominic might be told his parents do not want him is especially chilling, as it represents a deliberate attempt to sever the child's emotional ties, ensuring dependence on his captors. Amid this growing danger, the idea of Chance's unseen intervention becomes increasingly compelling. Imagine a scenario in which Dominic ultimately escapes, not through brute force or dramatic confrontation, but through a series of small, seemingly inexplicable moments: a door left unlocked, a sudden distraction, a choice made at exactly the right second. Later, when Devin and Abby ask Dominic how he managed to get away, he might say something simple yet devastatingly powerful. Something like the belief that his father was there, helping him. Such a revelation would not only provide emotional closure for Abby, but also serve as a final farewell to Chance, a way to honor his character without rewriting the boundaries of the show's reality. This approach would address the lingering disappointment many fans feel over the lack of an on-screen funeral for Chance. Instead of a traditional goodbye, the story would offer something far more intimate and lasting: the confirmation that Chance's love did not end with his death, and that his role as a father transcended his physical presence. It would allow the show to acknowledge his importance, give weight to Abby's grief, and reinforce the theme that love, once formed, does not simply disappear. Ultimately, this storyline hinges on the contrast between two forces shaping Dominic's fate. On one side is Ian Ward, representing manipulation, obsession, and the destructive persistence of trauma. On the other is Chance Chancellor, representing protection, sacrifice, and the enduring power of love beyond loss. Mariah stands caught between these forces, her actions driven by pain rather than malice, while Abby fights from the outside, guided by faith in the man she lost and the child she refuses to give up. Whether Angel Chance truly appears or not, his presence already looms large over the narrative, offering a quiet counterbalance to Ian's darkness. The question now is not simply whether Dominic will be saved, but which influence will ultimately define his understanding of love, family, and safety, and what price will be paid before that answer is revealed.